Under the blazing lights of the Forum in Inglewood, California, two men stepped into a ring that felt far larger than the canvas beneath their feet. On one side stood Carlos Principe Cuadras, Mexico's undefeated WBC super flyweight champion, a man who had danced with danger for years, relying on speed, angles, and charisma to protect a perfect record. His aura was electric, his movements loose and confident, his smile masking the seriousness of what waited ahead. Across from him, the challenger stood calm, compact, and coiled with intent. Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, Nicaragua's beloved warrior, already a three-division world champion, a fighter baptized in fire since childhood, and now chasing history as he attempted to capture a world title in a fourth weight division. The audience felt the magnitude. This wasn't just a fight, it was a collision of nations, a stylistic masterpiece in the making. As the referee brought them together for the final instructions, the tension tightened like a rope stretched to the breaking point. Chocolatito's eyes never left Cuadras. Wide open, studying, calculating. Cuadras, bouncing lightly, stared back with defiant pride, knowing he represented the fighting heart of Mexico. When the bell rang, the roar of the crowd cascaded down like a wave. The opening minute became a test of rhythm. Cuadras circling with quick feet, tossing sharp jabs, probing for weaknesses, while Chocolatito applied that signature forward pressure, silent, methodical, inching closer with every subtle step. He didn't need to throw to be dangerous. His presence alone forced Cuadras to move, forced him to breathe harder, forced him to fight on terrain he didn't choose. It was the beginning of a chess match, played at a sprint, where every inch gained came at the cost of sweat, energy, and future comfort. The story of the night had begun. As the early rounds unfolded, a rhythm took shape, Cuadras darting along the ropes, firing quick combinations, while Chocolatito stalked him with relentless precision. The Nicaraguan's pressure was suffocating, a force that didn't rely on brute strength, but on positioning, timing, and a kind of ring intelligence that made him feel inevitable. Every pivot, every half step, every subtle roll of his shoulders pulled him closer into punching range. By the third round, the momentum had tilted. Chocolatito's hooks and uppercuts began landing in close quarters, thudding against Cuadras' ribs and gloves like heavy stones thrown against a wall. Cuadras fired back bravely, sharp hooks, crisp straight rights, but the challenger absorbed them with a calmness only seen in fighters who had lived through 100 wars. Crowds began to sense the shift. Cuadras, for all his skill, was burning fuel too quickly. Chocolatito was making him expend energy not with punches, but with movement, chasing space that kept evaporating. Yet Cuadras remained dangerous. A sudden hook in the third snapped Chocolatito's head sideways, drawing murmurs from the crowd. Another right hand sliced through the guard moments later. But what stunned spectators wasn't the damage. It was how Chocolatito didn't blink, didn't back up, didn't even pause. He simply resumed his march, tightening the noose with every exchange. Even commentators marveled, comparing his pressure to legends, noting how he could roll punches on his shoulders and return fire with machine-like accuracy. By the end of the round, Cuadras' corner warned him, "Work the body, don't let him take your rhythm." But the truth hung in the air. Rhythm was already slipping away. Chocolatito wasn't just fighting Cuadras, he was reshaping the pace, remolding the fight into his own domain, where constant heat slowly melts opponents from the inside. As the middle rounds began, the true drama of the fight emerged. Cuadras, still undefeated, refused to fold under the pressure. His pride, the pride of a Mexican champion, burned fiercely. Every time Chocolatito tightened the distance, Cuadras unleashed flurries, snapping left hooks and right hands designed to regain control. In the fifth and sixth rounds, he found pockets of success. A clean hook forced Chocolatito to pause for the briefest moment, a rare sight. Soon after, a sharp right hand opened a noticeable mark under Gonzalez's left eye, streaking his cheek with the first hint of red. It was a testament to Cuadras' power, and it sparked life into the Mexican crowd. They roared with each combination, urging their champion to hold his ground. And for a moment, he did. Cuadras circled with renewed purpose, firing counters in rhythm, tap-tap with the jab, then a heavier right hand behind it. But Chocolatito's answer was chilling. He walked straight through the storm, gloves tight, chin tucked, rolling just enough to blunt Cuadras' shots. Then he responded with violent precision, short uppercuts inside, sweeping hooks that thudded against Cuadras' body and arms. His attacks never stopped. Even his light punches were tactical. Tap, 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 then boom, the heavier shot that followed. The pace was unsustainable, and yet Cuadras refused to show weakness. His footwork saved him from eating the full force of some combinations, but his face wore the marks of battle, swelling, blood, exhaustion creeping in like a slow tide. Still, he fought back with defiance. In the sixth, the two men exchanged fierce hooks in the center of the ring, the crowd erupting as sweat sprayed off both fighters' heads. It was a war of wills now, neither man ready to surrender an inch. But beneath the noise, one truth became clear. Chocolatito's pressure was not slowing down. In fact, it was growing stronger. By the seventh and eighth rounds, the fight had transformed into a brutal symphony of attrition. Cuadras' face was smeared with blood, some from a punch, some from an accidental headbutt that opened a cut above his right eye. The swelling worsened with every exchange, and vision became a luxury rather than a guarantee. Yet, the champion fought with astonishing bravery. He launched wild, spirited flurries when pushed to the ropes, digging deep into his reserves. But Chocolatito remained ice-cold, refusing to be drawn into reckless exchanges. Instead, he tightened his attacks. Sharp left hooks, crisp right hands, body shots that drained energy with cruel efficiency. Commentators began to admire his work rate, noting that every round felt like a controlled storm unleashed by the Nicaraguan master. Cuadras' counters still came, but they were now thrown out of necessity, out of survival, rather than strategy. The pace was taking a toll. Even so, there were moments of beauty from the champion. A spinning exchange that saw him land multiple right hands, and a fierce sequence at the end of the eighth that visibly shook Chocolatito for a split second. But that's all it was, a second. Gonzalez regained his composure immediately, staring forward with the unbreakable focus of a man who had chased greatness his entire life. The crowd began to feel the weight of history. Chocolatito wasn't simply winning rounds. He was forging a performance worthy of a fourth division crown. But Cuadras' will kept the fight alive. Even hurt, even bleeding, even breathing heavy, he refused to let the challenger dominate without resistance. It was the heart of a Mexican warrior against the precision of a Nicaraguan legend, clashing under the brightest lights of their careers. Entering the championship rounds, exhaustion clung to both fighters like a second skin. Sweat poured, breaths deepened, and the arena's intensity sharpened into something raw and unforgettable. Cuadras, knowing the scorecards were slipping away from him, tapped into a reservoir only true champions possess. He began taking more risks, planting his feet and throwing combinations in bursts that brought the crowd to life. A pair of right hands in the ninth landed flush, snapping Chocolatito's head back. For a moment, the complexion of the fight flickered. Could Cuadras turn the tide? Could he dent the armor of a man seemingly built to withstand chaos? But every time he surged, he paid a price. Chocolatito's counters were merciless, sharp hooks to the body, uppercuts through the guard, crisp left-right combinations that punished Cuadras for daring to hope. The cut above Cuadras' eye worsened, blood trickling down the side of his face as his corner applied frantic pressure between rounds. Still, he refused to wilt. In the 10th and 11th, the battle escalated into pure willpower. Both men connected with monstrous shots, sweeping left hooks, snapping right hands, brutal body punches that echoed across the arena. Fans rose to their feet, sensing they were witnessing something special. Chocolatito's volume didn't drop. His accuracy remained machine-like, but Cuadras kept answering, roaring back with flurries that defied fatigue. It was no longer about tactics. It was no longer about footwork or game plans. It was about pride, about refusing to break, refusing to be reduced to a footnote in someone else's history. With every punch, Cuadras declared, "You may take my belt, but not my spirit." Then came the 12th and final round, 12 minutes already behind them, one last stanza left to etch their names into the memory of the sport. Both men touched gloves out of mutual respect, then immediately launched into combat. Cuadras came out blazing with wild hooks, desperate to flip the fight on its head. His punches carried urgency, defiance, and the roar of a champion who refused to accept defeat. But Chocolatito met that storm head-on. A brutal uppercut split through the center, followed by a thudding left hook that sent sweat flying from Cuadras' face. Still, the Mexican champion refused to step back, swinging from his heels, hoping for that one miracle shot. The crowd screamed with every exchange, sensing the courage unfolding before them. The final minute became a war within a war. Cuadras throwing with defiant energy, Chocolatito responding with surgical precision. Neither man backed down. Neither man allowed fatigue to dictate the end of the story. When the final bell rang, both stood tall, bloodied, exhausted, but proud. The arena erupted in applause for two warriors who had given everything. As they waited for the scorecards, Cuadras paced with bruised determination, knowing he fought his heart out. Chocolatito stood still, gloves to his chest, absorbing the gravity of the moment. Then came the announcement, a unanimous decision, and new WBC Super Flyweight Champion of the world, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. The crowd exploded, witnessing history, the first Nicaraguan ever to claim a world title in 4 divisions. Cuadras, despite the loss, earned the respect of everyone watching. He had not been broken, he had been part of a masterpiece. And Chocolatito, drenched in sweat and glory, lifted his belt high, a symbol of perseverance, mastery, and the unyielding pursuit of greatness.